Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside the tutorial for Nations at War Digital. This is a game that is coming out from Lock and Load Publishing, and it will be available on Steam Early Access soon. Not sure when. It was originally supposed to be out already, but best laid plans and all that, it did not work out the way that they had wanted to, so we're waiting for it to be released. But in the meantime, I figured I would show you guys a look inside the tutorial. Alright, so I have a set right now for the tutorial. It's going to just set you up just like this. To read what the tutorial's about, we're going to just look at the mission. And it says, tutorial, no bridge too far. It is on map 2, which is what you see behind this little window here. And there's a little bit of a readout there as to what the situation is for the scenario. You can read that if you want, hit pause and read it, but I'm not going to go over it. It's not really important to the scenario itself. We're just going to stick to the mechanics of the scenario and the tutorial. On the left hand side, we have the allies. This is the units that you'll be facing for the allies, and we will be running the Axis units. We'll get these units here, as well as one support barrage of 3-4 fire mission. We will go over that when we get to that point. The scenario is 6 turns. There are 2 end turn markers in the cup, and the victory conditions are capture any 1 bridge hex within the town. Any other result is an American victory. And when we close this out, you'll see the hexes that are highlighted in gold. Those are the bridges, those are the objectives here for this scenario. Just as you've seen, if you've looked at any of the other videos that I've done, the objectives are always going to be highlighted here in gold. So over on the left-hand side, we have this little text box. This is what the tutorial does. It gives you these text boxes here, and you just click continue to move on to the next step. The first thing you're going to talk about is the icon bar on the right-hand side of this screen. If you've looked at it in my other videos, you know what this is, but I'll go over it just the same for anybody who may not be familiar with it. You can toggle the auto camera on and off. I have it toggled off because I just like to keep it off and not have the map pull me around for the different pieces of action. I'll watch it myself, easy enough. And the zoom here, you can just use this little scroll bar here to zoom in and out, or you can use the mouse scroll wheel, which is what I used right there. Then we have the manual, and this is the full core rules manual version 3.0, which comes with the box set, and it is also available on the Lock and Load website for you to download and read offline at your own leisure anytime you'd like to. You can just scroll through here, and this will give you the rules, every bit of the rules from the game. And just a little quick note, it is 81 pages. Don't be intimidated by that. This is a very simple game. The reason why it's 81 pages is Lock and Load is pretty exhaustive in giving you all of the detail that you'll need in the game. Like you see here, this is the listing of all of the counters in the game, a breakdown of every bit of the numbers that's on every counter, and then a lot of images in this rule book. The rules actually start on, let's see here, page 9, I guess you could say, is where we start with the general concepts, and then you will get the nomenclature definitions, so on and so forth. But we'll just scroll through real quick. You can see this text is fairly large, just what you get in the printed rulebook, so that's why you're going to have a lot of pages. There's not a tremendous amount of text on each page because they use a larger font, which us older guys really do appreciate. So we'll close out of that. We'll go to the menu option, and that's where you go resume, save, load game options, and stop session. We're not going to stop the session. We'll just go back to resume, and we will move on to the next step. And here is where we go over controls. We've kind of already touched on that. Move in and out with the scroll wheel. You can also move around the map with the WSAD keys, which is what I've been using. That's what I prefer to use. You can also use the option of moving your mouse to the edge of the screen, which I've turned off, as you can see, because I'm at the edge of the screen and it's not moving the mouse around or the map around. And that's because I'm a little ham-fisted with my mouse, and I like to, kind of throw that mouse cursor all over the place. I'll jump from hex to hex during the game, and if I want to get to one of these edge hexes here for whatever reason, if I do that, it will definitely move the map. So I avoid that by turning it off. That's just a little general FYI for you. And then we have the game progression. At the start of the game, both players set up their forces on the board. This step has been skipped for the tutorial. If you watched the other scenario that I did, I set up these counters before the scenario started here. It's already done for you. You don't have to worry about it, and it makes it easier just to jump right in. This is a controlled scenario that you're going to be basically told what to do, and you're going to do it. You're going to see the outcomes, and I'm going to give you a little bit more fleshed out answer than what you see in the tutorial, but it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy for you to understand. and it's going to give you the turn panel explanation here at the top, and we're going to talk about the counters as well. Nations at War is a chit pull system game, and that is what this is here. This is your virtual cup. When you play the board game, you're going to have these unit markers here, these formation counters, or the formation cards, because now they're using formation cards in the new version of Nations at War. But in this instance, they're still using the counters, and they effectively do the same thing. What you do is you throw these counters into a cup along with a couple of end turn markers. In this scenario, they only use 2. Some scenarios you will use 3. And for those not familiar with chit pull, you throw all these into a cup, and then you blindly pull one out. And depending on which one gets pulled, it will be either the American or the German in this instance, or an end turn marker. And then when the second end turn marker is pulled, that is the end of the turn, and it moves to the next one. And that's what the beauty of chit pull is. It introduces a lot of uncertainty and a lot of tension, and you never know if you're going to get to go. If you're going to go first, you're going to go second. Just keeps you guessing each time. There's no definite I go first and you go second every turn like in some games. Here, it's up in the air, which makes it a lot of fun. And as I've said before in another video here, the objectives are listed out for you here. We could just close that just to kind of clear up the clutter on the map. And then we're going to start off by seeing some explosions, because the first step in each turn is the artillery barrage. And like I pointed out before, the Germans get an artillery barrage here. The Americans don't in this scenario, but this is all intended for you to see all the steps for each turn. So you're going to get a chance to fire up to 2 fire missions per turn. Everybody does, if you have the fire missions available. You can have either HE barrages, smoke, or indirect mortar fire if you have mortar units on the map. So in this one, we have 1 fire mission. It is a 3-4, and we'll explain what that all is in the next step. So we'll click on fire missions, and we'll click barrage. Now, everything you see here in green is within LOS of your headquarters or your recon units, and that's important because those units need to be able to see what your artillery is going to hit. Otherwise, you cannot send out a fire mission. So everything here pretty much is visible except for this 1 infantry unit here, and this template that I'm kind of throwing around here as a pointer is important because this is what you're going to place on the target, which is this infantry unit right here. When you place it there, not only are you going to have, I'm going to move it off for a second so that way we don't have the other pop-up box there, but where the bombs are in the center, that's where you're going to hit, but every hex around it, all 6 hexes around that are also going to be attacked. And what's going to happen is it's a 3-4 fire mission, so we're going to roll 3 dice, and the to hit is 4. So for every hex, you're going to roll 3 dice, and depending on how many hits you get, of 4 or better on the die roll, it's going to inflict 1 strike. And then there is going to be a little defense too, which we're going to touch on. But let's go ahead and select the impact area here, and we'll see the fun. And the first step in the artillery strike is to make sure your FO is sent the right coordinates up to your cannon cockers, and they can get steel on target effectively. And what you do is you roll a 1d6 and a roll of 2 to 6. It is on target. A roll of 1 is an ineffective mission, and it will not count. Here we've got a roll of 4, so it's definitely going to be on target. And as you see here at the very bottom of the dice, you have this little arrow line that's going to move from right to left. This is going to count down. It's a countdown timer, and this is going to count down how long you have to use fate points. We don't have fate points in this scenario, so we really don't need to touch on them, but fate points are granted in the scenario rules in some scenarios, and they allow you to affect the dice in different ways. You can read about it in the rule book. We don't need to cover it here because it's not going to have any effect in this scenario. All right, so let's let her rip on the artillery. So our first strike is a success. We get 2 hits. Remember, it is a 3-4 fire mission. You're going to roll 3 dice, and you must get the to-hit number of 4 or better. We've got a 4 and a 6, so 2 will hit. That's fantastic, but guess what? The defender gets a say in the matter and has a chance to avoid hits using a saving die roll. Infantry is a soft target, and they have a save roll of a 5. In this instance, they're getting 2 dice because they're inside of the city, so they get 2d6, but if they roll 5 or better, they can ignore 1 or more hits. And in this instance, they rolled below 5, so they're going to take both hits. And keep in mind that there are 3 hits that you have to put on a target to destroy it if it is fresh, like this one. The first one will disrupt, the second one will reduce, and the third one will eliminate. Disruption can be removed during the rally phase early on in the turn, but in this instance, he's going to get a disruption and a reduction only. Reduction you cannot come back from. That's a step loss, but you can recover from a disruption. So keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to continue on here, and we'll see the outcome. You see it says disrupted and reduced because those 2 strikes hit. Move on to the next one. We get 2 strikes. And guess what? The infantry inside the city gets 2d6. They roll. They get 1. So they can save 1. So they're only going to take 1 hit, and they will end up disrupted. In this last attack, there are no defense die rolled because the unit is in the open and receives no terrain benefit, and in turn, no dice. So you won't be able to roll to get your save number. And there are 2 targets in the hex, so each will suffer 1 attack, as the damage has to be split amongst multiple targets in the hex. The easiest way to remember this is to follow the same mnemonic that I always used, and that is 1 for all before all for 1. So you can remember to spread out that damage amongst all the targets in the hex before you can ever put them all on one. So if we took out the infantry this time, and next time we were coming around, we were hitting the ATG, well, guess what? They're going to absorb all of those hits. So that's how that works. All right, so we'll click continue, and we will see both units taking a disruption because they both get 1 hit. And the last piece of the attack deals with headquarters damage and destruction. If the headquarters unit is in a hex where units have taken any type of damage, you get a disruption or a reduced result, the headquarters unit runs the risk of being damaged or destroyed itself. So a final die roll will determine if the headquarters unit lives or dies. And what you're going to do is roll a 1d6. On a result of 1, the headquarters will be damaged. It'll be flipped over to its reduced side. If it is already reduced and it takes a damage, it will destroy the headquarters. If a unit in the hex with the headquarters has been eliminated, there is a -2 die roll modifier applied to the die roll, and a result of 1 or less, the headquarters will be reduced, or if it's already reduced, it'll be damaged. If all units in the hex are eliminated, the headquarters will be eliminated as well. So you don't even have to roll the die. If everybody gets nuked in that hex, they're all going to die, including the headquarters. And it's real important to keep your headquarters alive. They're really critical pieces of your formations. They are a key to activating all your units in your formation. Without the headquarters units, all units in the formation will need to roll a command check to make sure that they're in command and they can do operations in their turn. To do the command status check, you roll a 2d6 against your morale rating of the unit. And I'll give you an example here. If you had a formation headquarters with a morale of 7, means that every unit not within the command radius of the unit must roll a 7 or less with that 2d6. In the case of an eliminated headquarters, all units in the formation must roll to see if they are considered in command and can therefore activate and move and fight as normal. So that's why it's so critical to protect your headquarters. In this instance, we have a die roll of 3, so the headquarters lives to fight another day. So we'll just continue on to the next step. And we'll see the carnage. There is no carnage. And this is what we were just talking about, command status. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick rundown of it, which I already did, explaining to you what happens if you're out of command. You're going to have to roll a morale check to see if you're in command, and if not, you'll be out of command, and that's what this is here. So we'll continue on to the next step, and we're going to get into operations now. And now we're in the operations section of the turn, and as you can see, these units are glowing green around their edges, and that means they're all capable and ready to go with operations for this turn. So you'll be able to do whatever you want with your units. And the scenario here in the tutorial, it'll walk you through the steps that it wants you to take. So we're going to activate the Puma first, and you're going to click on the stack, the headquarters and Puma. We're going to select the Puma. To do operation, we're going to select perform operations. And when you select a unit, you're going to see a large template overlay that will change as you move the cursor around the map. And what this does is it indicates the ranges and lines of sight from each hex that you're moving into. Like if we move here, like we want to move this Puma to this hex and this hex, and we want to say we want to end up over here. Once you move over here, this is what your ranges are going to be, and this is what your line of sight is going to be compared to the opposing units on the map right now. So this will give you a way to forecast where you're going to be, a little bit more situational awareness on the 2D battle space here that we're playing in. And any hex that you have line of sight to will be bright. Anything that's darked out, you do not have line of sight to for obvious reasons. Like, for example, over here, this 04, when we move back here, you can't see that because it is blocked by this city here. You can see into this city, but you can't see through it to the next hex. So that's something to keep in mind. And as we move around, I'm going to pull this back a little bit so you can see the yellow and the red. The yellow here indicates your high explosive range, and the red indicates your AP range, your armor piercing range. So that also is an easy indicator as to let you know what units are going to be in range of what weapons that you may use on your turn. And HE is for your soft targets, and AP is for your hard targets. Easy way to remember. HE is actually far more devastating to use than AP. You'd think, though, that AP would be really tough, but armor piercing is specifically meant to take on armored units. HE is high explosive, and that's going to be much more devastating to use on your soft targets. And we've got this Sherman down here that's encircled in red. That lets you know that that target is in range and you can take a shot at it. So you know what? Hey, let's take a shot at it. So you just click on it. You'll put the crosshairs on it. You select Perform Operations. And just like before, you're going to roll your 4d6 because that's your attack die. And you have an attack, one successful attack of a 6. And that is going to be a successful hit. Click Continue. But guess what? As I said before, the defender has a say in the matter. They roll their save die, and they successfully roll a 6 as well. So that mitigates the damage. In other words, you know, their driver definitely zigs when he should have zigged instead of zigged when he should have zagged, and he's definitely going to avoid that hit. And something I haven't touched on yet, in this situation, the Puma has a range of 4. You can see by the top left number, 425 in the top left corner. The 4 is the range. This is obviously beyond 4. So this is what you call extended range. There's a couple of range bands. There's standard range and then there's extended range. And we're into extended range here. Extended range means you can shoot up to double the standard range. So standard would be 4. You can shoot up to 8. But in this instance, I think it's like 6, it looks like. So what happens is it raises your to hit value by 1. Or the other way you can do it is you can reduce your firepower by 1 if the unit's to hit number is already at 6. Being that we're not at 6, our to hit number is 5, and we go in extended range, we had to roll a 6, which we did. And obviously it didn't matter because the Sherman was able to roll its save. But I just wanted to point that out to you, being that, you know, it's something that you'll see here, and you may not have picked up on it, especially if you're not familiar with the game. But we'll move on to the next step. And you'll see the cool animation. You'll see the shot. You'll see the smoke. Impact doesn't matter because the driver was able to jink out of the way and not get his crew in danger. And another note about that extended range things, there's also reduced range. Your to hit value gets reduced by 1 if the target is within less or equal to half the attacker's range, and units with underlined values do not gain the reduced range benefit and may never fire at extended range. Just another couple interesting notes for you. So what they're going to do now is we're going to do some moving, and we're going to take this half track here and we're going to move it by collecting the Perform Operations. We're going to move here, and then we're going to move down here. And then we're going to unload the troops because they're carrying troops inside. We need to unload the troops. And the easiest way to do that is just click on the icon itself and the troops will dismount. Now I want to remove them for a second because I want to show you down here the timeline. It gives you, this timeline will walk you back. An easy way to redo your steps is just to click down here on the timeline and remove them. So we're going to step up here. We're going to go here. And you notice down here it says 3 out of 5 movement points are left. There goes your last 3 when you unload your units. You see here it says unload in 3, so that's the point cost for unloading your troops. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We'll just select Perform Operations, and you may run into opportunity fire here from the enemy. And this is something to bear in mind when you're doing your moves. As your unit moves, you can come under attack by opportunity fire from any good order opposing unit that is not ops complete. In this instance, the Sherman can take a pot shot at us if they choose, but the infantry units we disrupted and reduced from our earlier barrage are unable to attack, so we're good there. The only threat to us now is that M4 Sherman that's sitting down right off the road. And this shows you why it's good to soften up your targets before maneuvering with artillery if you've got it. Units can also spend some of their movement points during the activation to be in Overwatch, and that'll allow you to do op fire. And since no units from the American side have activated yet, the Sherman will be the only eligible unit that can fire on us. So let's kick this thing off and see what happens. So we move, and the Sherman traverses his turret on us, and you know he's going to send some steel down range. That half-track is a hard target, so the Sherman will use its less potent AP shot at us, which is a 2 firepower with a 5 to hit number, instead of using its more powerful high explosive attack of 3 firepower or 4 to hit, because, again, this is not a soft target, it's a hard target. The Sherman is also at extended range, so that'll add a +1 to hit penalty. Always be mindful of ranges when moving in Nations at War. So the Sherman is going to face the same difficulty that the Puma did earlier, being at extended range. So we'll continue and see what happens here. So the Sherman swings and misses, and the infantry will unload successfully. So now we've got some breathing room. All the enemy units are either ops complete or disrupted and can't act. So that gives us a lot of freedom to move units around without having to worry about getting shot at or anything. So you see now the benefit of successful fire and maneuver. So I'm just going to randomly move some units around here. I'm going to move these guys over here because this is not directed by the scenario, and we're going to unload our infantry here, perform that op. And we'll take this Puma and we'll move him, let's say we'll move him down to here, and we will enter Overwatch. So I put that Puma in Overwatch to give a little bit of assistance to the infantry that's down there in case the American units decide to get froggy and move up and attack the infantry. I can possibly get a snapshot on them with a little op fire. So we're done. So we will hit the finish activation button and continue on. So now it's the Americans' turn. And again, remember the activation phases. You have your command checks, rallies, fire missions, operations, are all handled in this phase. And the first thing you're going to do is do your command check. They're going to rally successfully. They don't need to do a command check because they're all in command. They're going to successfully rally here. And that unit's going to rally. This unit does not rally, so they're not going to be able to do anything this turn. So remember, for disrupted units, you need to roll a morale check, and that is the sum of a 2d6, and it must be less than or equal to the morale value of your headquarters. In this instance, it is a 6. Headquarters do subtract their leadership value from morale check rolls used in the same hex, so it's good to know that when you have a key unit in the hex with that headquarters, you're going to get that added benefit on your morale check. If you roll higher than the morale value, as that one infantry unit did, you're going to remain disrupted, and you cannot attack during your next activation, but you can still move as long as it's either out of enemy LOS or you're moving away from the enemy. So we're going to click continue. And there's going to be an op fire situation here. The Puma can take a shot at this infantry unit, but you know what? I'm going to skip that. I'm going to save an op fire for somebody else. We've got an infantry attack here. They get a successful attack on my infantry, which is out in the open. They also get a shot at me with their ATG. They get 2 successful hits. I mitigate 1. I'm disrupted. And then the infantry back here is going to take a shot at this infantry unit, and it's going to be successful, and it's going to disrupt that infantry unit as well. Now the Sherman's going to take a shot at that half-track, and he's going to nail it. So now we got a smoking wreck sitting there, and that is the first end turn and the second end turn, because there were only 2 formation counters in the cup. So the first one now that gets pulled up would be the German, and we continue to go on for the next one. But we're not going to continue on any further. That is the end of the tutorial itself. So I just wanted to close it out with a couple of other important aspects of the game. It's possible to both move and fire with your units during operations. Attacks are either first or the last action of your operation, and movement points are halved when doing this. And another important bit is the assault and overrun. This type of combat is where you enter the enemy's hex, and it is all determined by the assault factor and the to-hit numbers, which are in the lower right-hand corner of the counter. Not all units have the capability, so be mindful of that before you make up some impressive plans to dominate your opponent by running roughshod over them, and you get there and you realize, oh, I can't assault and overrun. That sucks. So you want to make sure you have the right units to pull that one off. And finally, if you have two units from the same formation in the same hex, they can run operations together as what's called stacked operations. It's run the same way as any regular op, but you will control the two units step by step. It's also possible to split the stack during operations, but you cannot abandon your headquarters. And as we've seen how critical the headquarters are, why would you ever want to abandon it? And that brings us to the end of the tutorial within Nations at War. I hope this helps you better understand both the game and the interface, and it gets you ready to jump in and start sending steel downrange when the game is available on Steam Early Access from Lock and Load Publishing. You have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.